take 2 of Generally Speaking with Mark Register and Nick Inero Smith. Thank you for making the time, if audio permits.
No problem. Round 3, Mark. Let's get it.
Thank you, Sam and Crystal, for letting us know that the audio is absolutely terrible. Hopefully this works this time. In the meantime, we talked about pretty much life's story, which doesn't really matter anymore because we're just moved past that. But I do actually want to go back into the Australia part because I think that was interesting, which was your original plan was to kind of go to Australia to then bring people into the NA. So can you tell that story again for the second or third time?
Yeah. So whole goal was we play out the year in Australia in the OPL, and there was this kind of loophole timing where we could compete for a spot in the North American Challenger Series. And cool, we would just bring everyone over. We'd obviously have to replace one of the Australian players with an American just to fit import rules, and we would just plug that person in and then look to compete. If we got into Challenger Series, then cool, we get these Australian players a shot at just a better region to compete. And if it didn't work, then, fuck it. We just go back, play in the OPL, and we missed out on nothing. But yeah, we ended up franchising instead. So all of that got sorted. That wouldn't have even been a possibility anymore. And Tainted Minds happened. So all around just wasn't possible to really exist. But that was the plan.
So your method of usually coaching or life with people is usually kind of growing them into pro players for the long term. Sometimes that progress takes a little bit longer than you expected. So I guess my question is that just because you're a good person, or is that just because it's good coaching?
I feel like that's just coaching. I feel like to be a good coach, you kind of have to try to be a good person. But yeah, I would just say it's a part of coaching. Your whole goal is to build up people for the long term and see them improve over time. Not to just throw 5 people together, you tell them what to do, pretend to be a dictator or general, and then nice, they won. That's not coaching. It's more about just the long-term growth of people that are under your responsibility.
Okay, so can confirm you're not actually a good person, but you have to be for your job. Got it. So
yeah, exactly.
So with GG for last split, what did you go into the split hoping for, and what did you guys end up with?
Going into this split with Golden Guardians, it's still all a part of the long-term plan for us of just finding the best pieces we can for a team long-term and building up those younger guys that we think can be those pieces eventually. Going into this split, we'd obviously moved up FBI in the middle of last year. I brought him in for Academy while I was working there. He got moved up to LCS pretty quickly. Goal is to keep him for this year, seeing just where he could go as a player. We kept Kevin, domestic player. It's a pretty good piece for our team last year, pretty consistent. Wanted to make sure that we still had that solid piece. Maybe he's someone we want to build around and keep going with. We were happy with it, so we kept that to see how that's going to work out. And then past that, we were looking at closer in offseason. It was someone that I was really interested in. I watched the wildcard regions pretty regularly, and I was pretty impressed by how he was doing. And it was just, okay, I could see this guy. I could see him being someone who's good long term. I'd like to build around him. I feel like he's someone that we could go after and have long term that would actually be a pretty beneficial part of the team. And yeah, kind of built the team around that. So knowing that we had FBI, closer, and then Hanser, we needed to fill out the other 2 roles with domestic people. And yeah, we ended up doing that with Golden Glue, and then initially with Keith and Huhi. And yeah, the goal is just see how these guys can do. Obviously pursue for the highest, rank in the season possible. We ended up getting playoffs, which was not bad, but would have been happy with more. But yeah, our goal was just to push as far as we could this split, see what the limits are of our players, kind of get the initial parts of just team bonding and team synergy together, figure out what issues are there, what are just the strengths and weaknesses, so we can build on that for summer and then look for improvements further beyond that.
So if you have unlimited time and resources, you can kind of do whatever you want, but you have limited time, you have limited resources. So my question to you then is, what is the biggest bottleneck for you?
The biggest bottleneck in terms of what, team building, or
Like,
just
in other words, okay, let's say Closer came in and it took 2 months for him to kind of really acclimate to things, or that swap players or whatever, and just like was the bottleneck the transition time for players getting used to certain things, or is it being able to review enough like VOD footage? Like, what do you wish that you had more time and resources to work on?
more time and resources to work on? Not really sure on that. I mean, I guess it'd always be nice to have more time just to work on things outside of the game and get people acclimated to life together before they practice. You don't really get a lot of time with that, with League. I mean, I guess you could, but the culture is kind of away from that. It's more of just like everyone grinding. We've definitely pulled back from that, and we try not to do that as much, but it'd be nice to just have I guess the ability to do that more and get people more into team building things that are outside of the game. That's something that industry doesn't do a lot of right now. It's all pretty focused on in game, but I don't know if that's really a bottleneck. It's something we could definitely do. We're just like slowly implementing it over time.
So is that basketball, volleyball, D&D?
Yeah, doing stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that I think is really important and really underrated. Like our LCS team's push into playoffs last year was really on the back of just the team bonding over playing Warcraft 3. And like it's stuff like that is like not a coincidence. Like our team this split played a lot of like CSGO and stuff together just after scrims, and people don't realize those are like team building things, and that's actually like a thing that traditional sports and just other industries will do, as like they'll do it purposely, like having people do those things and build up together. It's pretty important to just do as a team. It helps you get closer, and you feel more comfortable giving feedback to each other and receiving feedback. So it's pretty important. Trust
is like a really big one. So like, yeah. How do you build that trust? And if the trust is broken, like how do you repair that?
There's obviously like different kinds of trust, I guess, too. There's like the trust you have with your friends, and trust you have with people that you like work alongside, and it's kind of like different levels of things. I guess if you're trying to build up the trust of like, okay, I know my teammate will do his job, I know he'll get this done. It's kind of like the trust of just a fellow worker. That is kind of built up through like showcasing it to your teammates. Like, okay, this is my role. I can perform this role consistently, and you can trust that I'll do that. So in game, if your job is to do this every game, you're consistently like doing that. And when you fail to do it, you acknowledge that, and you have some sort of responsibility around it, and you make sure that your teammates know that, and you're constantly working on it. That helps you build up the work side level of trust. And kind of like the friendship level of trust is like, it's more of a case of, hey, you can trust that if you're vulnerable with me and you tell me things about how you're feeling, I'm not just going to like throw this back in your face or use this against you. I'm going to use it to like actually help us grow as like teammates and like brothers and stuff like that, right? That like brotherhood kind of bond level of trust is kind of a different aspect, but all kind of carries into the same thing. Like those two levels of trust are really important to build up, and the way you build them up is just a little different.
So we talked about bottlenecks before. When it comes to the elements in which that you kind of have to like coach, one part would be game mechanics, then communication, then the physical health. Like, what are the elements in which that you think about of making sure that you have those plates spinning throughout the day and throughout the week?
Yeah, the out of game stuff is one, kind of like you're hitting on, like the health. That's multiple different things that we were slowly incorporating throughout the year, but had to kind of wean off from doing purely because the Corona stuff happened. Between like Kevin and Grayson, or Haunter and Golden Glue, those guys are really active guys. They're very healthy people, like outside of the game. Like you can just tell by looking at them, like they have a healthy lifestyle. So there's not like too much we have to do for them in regards of what they need to do for their like physical health. For them, it's more of like looking after their mental health and things that they're doing there. But no, the other guys on our team aren't necessarily like the biggest workout freaks. Like they don't go to the gym all the time. They don't do that. But we're slowly trying to like get that there for them. Like our management, when they set us up on the team, they got us like gym passes to Equinox, so all the players have access to that. That includes coaches as well, so that like our two-way player coach Sam, he actively wants to do stuff with those guys in the gym. So he was getting Closer and FBI into the gym with him, like, and Closer was also going like Kevin and Grayson at some point as well. But Sam was trying to get those guys involved with that to kind of work on their physical health, because that carries over to just how you feel when you come into the first games. Pretty big thing I've seen on a lot of teams I've been on is like the first game of the day, everyone's like super, like, just lethargic. Everyone's really tired. They wake up like 30 minutes before scrims or something like that. It's not a very professional way of like coming in, but it's all down to like your lifestyle choices. And that's not to say that like these guys on our team are doing that, but when you're building that up, that hey, you go to the gym in the morning, you do this, you live this like active lifestyle, you're more likely to be up and like refreshed and ready. That's how we've kind of tried to work on those types of things with the team and help them feel more comfortable. Or at least like that's where we were headed with it. Kind of got cut off by this. Now it's more so just like monitoring like how these guys are sleeping. Like I helped Victor get a like watch the tracks his sleep for him, so he knows how often he's sleeping. He can see like his pattern. Just different things like that. When it comes to everything inside of the game, I mean, we have a lot of different things for like monitoring performance on that, seeing how people are doing. Like, our coaches focus on things specifically, like goals for players individually, making sure they're matching those. If we notice they're not, you know, constantly looking for updates on them, doing one-on-ones with players, seeing what, you know, they're dealing with personally, dealing with in the game, that they want to like vent like frustrations like that aren't necessarily telling to their teammates. Multiple things like that to make sure the in-game side of things is covered.
So when it comes to like other coaches, let's say Cloud9 with Reaper, what do you think that you've talked about saying that you don't really necessarily know like the inwards facing of like on their day-to-day, but like what can you kind of extrapolate from Cloud9 and like Reaper that you kind of picked up from his coaching style and the way that he approaches things?
Yeah, like I said, I really have no idea. All I get to do is just hear the like hearsay of stuff, you know? Like I hear Reaper really plays to his players' strengths and builds around that constantly, you know? But I have no idea what he does, man. It's impossible to know. I don't talk to the guy. It's pretty impossible to talk to the guy. You don't really get to talk to other coaches too often. So yeah, I have no idea what he does, man.
All right, fair enough. So then, and that's the tricky part, is that there are so many questions that I want to ask you that you probably can't even answer. And so that's the tricky part about like coaches in general, is like you can't talk about most of the things that like everyone wants to talk about. So
yeah,
for you, we talked about this last time with filter. Like, do you just, is your default mode to filter? Like, do you have to like filter yourself before you say anything, or are there just certain things where you're like, yeah, I can't talk about like this subject?
You're talking about like filtering myself when I'm working in the team, or filtering myself for like media? Which one are you talking about filtering to?
We'll talk about media.
Okay, towards media, yeah, you definitely have to filter some things. Like we were talking about, like building up trust between the team. We talk about a lot of things that players are going to be very vulnerable about. You know, can't break players' trust and like talk about those things publicly. Like, okay, say that something happened, led to like a rough week, right? We got over it as a team, but it may have like harmed our practice that week, and we're not necessarily at 100% when it comes to the weekend. You're never gonna like come out and say like, oh, this happened, this was like terrible, and this like, ruined everything, right? Like that's just unprofessional, and it's something you should never really do, and it hampers your growth as a team. So no, you filter things like that. You always make sure you talk about like what you're doing as a team that you grew on. So even that week, we may have had like a struggle or something, we still improved on something for sure. And if we didn't improve, like, shit, dude, that's just my fault. Like, no matter what hurdles we go over, we should be improving on something. So, you know what, we'll talk about like the positives of what we did improve on. And then, you know, I'll just take it as a hit on me. Like, hey, I could have done more this week that would have got us like a better result. And, you know, that kind of level of filtering. But that's like, it's kind of what you should be doing anyways. Like, that's your responsibility. Those problems that pop up are things that as a coach you should have identified earlier and helped to fix. But you filter those because it's your fault, but you're not gonna like blame your team. Like that's awful. You should never be doing that. You should always put the responsibility on yourself as a coach. When it comes to doing like content pieces too, like it's really important we just filter like what's been happening throughout the week, like with our team. Like you don't want to give out like, oh, this is what we're practicing on and like strategically planning to do. Like, there's no benefit to that. Why would you ever do that? It just hurts you in the long run. You're not going to let people know like what picks you're doing. Not going to let people know like what you do versus a specific team, how you play, how you pick. Like you filter all that kind of stuff. That's what it just comes like in-game stuff or just like team stuff that I'm filtering. You know. As for other things to filter, I don't know. I try to filter my words, but I suck at that. I cuss a lot. I can't really help that one. That one's a little difficult, but I'd say that's about all that happens for filtering.
It's tricky because it's like, you know, you want to build a narrative. You want to like have the characters that you want to like, you know, get to know and whatever. But and it's the people who do like blurt out the thing they're not supposed to say that they get all the attention. But ultimately, then it screws over the team, and not just like personal feelings, but just like, you know, the strategy, as you said. So. I don't want to throw people under the bus. You talked about that, you know, people use documentaries or like content that's out there, and so it's like is anyone like notoriously bad at just like leaking out all their information?
I guess I wouldn't say it's like notoriously bad. Like I don't watch enough of like the team's documentaries to really know that, but you know the like dramatic ones, like TL Breaking Point, like that. That's that's a tough one. You don't do that. That obviously people still talk about that to this day, you know, to like harp on Dardok's career or even like Locodoco's career of like, hey, look at what happened on this. Like this was so unacceptable. This was so bad. Like I can't believe how toxic this guy is, or like how bad of a coach Loco is. And like you don't know. Like that was a vulnerable moment. Like that other shit had to have happened there and you have no context on it. And like that should never come out as a team. Like that ruins your team dynamic because now everyone knows that. And then as well, like if your content team's like filming stuff like that and the team knows it, like the team doesn't trust the content team to not put out something like that next time, you know? So they're going to like filter themselves in team. So like if I'm a player and I'm sitting there and I know my content team just did Breaking Point, like I'm like looking over my shoulder at the camera like, fuck, dude, I got to make sure I don't say anything. So like, I'm not going to be vulnerable to my team. Like it's going to be harder to get over hurdles. You know, I'm going to struggle to like talk about things that need to be talked about because I don't want to come off as like this toxic guy that got my team like doomed on this video on Reddit. And it's just really not good. There's ways to do it for sure to like show what it's like, the inner workings of a team, but you have to be really, really sure that you're keeping the trust of those players that you're trying to like show their lives to and show their like day-to-day work life to, you know? So that's the like biggest example. But you know, people watch those for drama. People don't watch the documentaries right now and League for anything other than drama, man. Every Reddit post you see on him, it's just like, oh yeah, look at this dude. This was crazy. Like this guy must be tilted this week. No wonder they lost. And it's shit.
So for like GG, you've talked about, you know, what you're trying to do with the org is to build, you know, long term, to have a place where, you know, you build pro athletes, you know, amateurs and the pro athletes are optimize the best people, but also create an environment in which that like people do their best and you're growing them long term. But then when you look at other teams, like FlyQuest is an interesting culture. What do you think about kind of the culture they set out to do, and do you think it's been successful?
Well, I mean, they've honestly slowly improved over the past few years compared to where their brand initially was, and obviously like they've changed around to like Tree Quest or whatever this year. But like when I first came into the league, like they were the Snickers team, you know, it was the Snickers MVP. Everyone loved making fun of that because it was just so bad. But I think like a team like that has grown a good amount, which is good to see. Like it's really important that teams are constantly growing that way, and it's showing in their results. I mean, we lost them in playoffs, and then they ended up going to like second place. And sure, they may have gotten like beat out by Cloud9, but you know, man, it was a good run. Cloud9 was beating everyone. Cloud9 was shitting on every team, dude. And FlyQuest did well. Like they did really good. And it's never a big coincidence that a team will have growth like that or like suddenly change. It's usually a lot of stuff that's happening on the just internal level with environment changes, culture changes. Like I know like they came in with a new was it role like CEO or COO? I don't know exactly what it was. I think it was CEO.
Trisha, right?
I think so. I think that was her name. But I know she came in and made like a few changes on stuff they were doing with brand. I'm sure there's been changes on the like leadership level of things, and you know, has to be working, has to be going pretty well. Unless they suddenly like bomb out next split and they're like last place, then you can maybe say, oh, that was a fluke. But seems to be going pretty good, and it's good to see stuff like that happen. I feel like we've had not necessarily like as big of a high as that as getting second. We've obviously just gotten to playoffs like 2 out of the 3 times so far this year for our LCS team, or since I've joined 2 out of 3 times. But that's a pretty good improvement from double 10th the year before when we came in. So it's always good to see teams making that just positive push up that haven't necessarily had that before.
What team is not making a positive push up? And if you were to jump in there to help, what would you do?
It's always hard to say because you don't really know what is the like negative that's going on in their team. Because like you could point at Team Liquid, right, and they went from like first place constantly to suddenly 9th. Shit, I don't know what's going on over there. I have no idea what happened. They changed the jungler out, and suddenly, you know, it's crazy. And then you see the reports of like, oh, double lifts maybe getting traded. It's like, shit, dude, I have no idea. It's hard to say for one like that. Then I guess CLG as well. Even that one, it's like, don't really know what's going on. Like they've made a few changes pretty consistently. Like last year, they changed out Darshan in the middle of the year. Coming into this year, they made changes on their mid and support. And shit, I don't know, man. I don't know what's happening over there. It's hard to say like what I would do to like change it without talking to them and knowing internally. And no one tells you those things that's going on internally because, you know, they shouldn't let people know what's happening on the inside, because then it's easier to just break them apart and then you lose, you know, the trust of your org. So it's hard to say.
So from org to org, does it change of like the influence of, it could be like a player, it could be a coach or a general manager, or it could be the owner. Like what usually is the main driving force of the culture?
Like culture changes are generally always like a top-down thing. Like if you're joining a team and say you come into a team and it's like this player like specifically is obviously like the one who controls the team, even though the player is the one who kind of sets like the culture and environment for that, and like at least that's what it appears to be. That's like a top-down thing. Like that's like the manager or, you know, the top person who's like involved day to day, like actually allowing that type of thing. You kind of build out what you want by like hiring certain coaches, certain players. You're stating like, this is the culture of people like I want to build around. This is like, I trust this person's vision with our team's culture. Usually you'll see people change out like a coach or a player because they don't fit that image anymore. And, you know, sometimes you'll come in and it's like, oh, this isn't the like owner, CEO, manager's like ideal culture for what's happening here. And that'll usually get changed like pretty fast. But, you know, it's usually a top-down thing. Usually starts from about as high up as it goes, because that's how you hire people out. I know like when I talked to like Kirk and Hunter, a lot of it was just about, you know, what we wanted the team's identity to be, and like identity being like the environment and the culture. Like talking with Dana, and like all of it is around like that, you know? Like we're building everything around like their ideas of a team, which is good. Like we should be building on what we align on, and then things that we don't align on, we talk about those differences and why, and then, you know, we make decisions based off that. So I think as long as your structure is well done, it's always led from the top.
So I'm guessing that the macro direction has kind of stayed the same, but there's probably been little changes, right?
And like ours specifically, like our team? Yeah, of course. Like when we first came in, it was like me, Danon, John. We came in and joined the team for 2019. We hired out like coaching staff, hired out players. It's basically like almost an entirely new roster outside of Defthlane contracts. You know, we kind of picked up like the people that were floating around that were just free agents. You don't usually have a lot of free agents, honestly, in League. People usually re-sign very fast. Or they'll re-sign before their contract's up. So, you know, we took the players like we had opportunities to get, you know, to see what they were like. I have no idea what to expect from people until you work with them. Like I knew what to expect from Froggen because I had worked with them on Echo Fox, so I was still interested in working with them. So bringing in a guy like that, like we kind of know what to expect from him. Didn't know too much about like definitely contracts. Like I knew a little bit from like the small amount of time I worked with them. Very interested still in working with those guys to see how that would go. And then yeah, bringing in like Ole and Hanser, like, yeah, we brought them in, but we don't necessarily know what those guys are like at all. You can talk to them, but people can lie when they talk to you. You know, that's very easy to do. And yeah, we got to see like from those guys what we like liked, what we didn't like, what seemed like the best culture fit, what didn't seem like a good culture fit, and then you know made moves around that to kind of mold our whole team's you know just environment to fit better towards what we were looking for long term. I think teams are always in like a constant like flux of changing that around. It's never going to be like perfect for what you want, right? Personalities will always like change, but trying to keep that identity of what we want our culture to be is always kind of there.
I had a question, but I lost it. Another question.
No worries.
When it comes to like specific goals, we talked about this last week, but I want to hit it again, which is how do you set specific goals for each week for individual players, the team as a whole? Yeah, and can you give examples of like specific goals that you kind of gave throughout the split?
Yeah, so specific goals, we always have a team goal that we're focused on. Just to give like an example, say like we're focused on improving like when we take our first dragon in a game. Like, all right, dragon spawns at this time. We know like what's going to be happening with our lane states in this game. So communicating from like draft, this is how like we need to set up for that dragon. This is how we'll like get a base timing that sets that dragon up better for us, and this is how we'll like manage our waves for it. The team goal is the dragon, and then through the week of practice, we'll be looking at you know everyone's individual goal leading up to that. Bot lanes like wave management base timings matter a lot for that. So their individual goal will be based around that. We'll look at those things. It'll be myself, Aaron, and Sam, the coaching staff. We'll like split up our responsibilities between that. We're watching very different things. Like I usually watch bot lane. Aaron's usually watching our solo lanes, and when Sam is in the room and not with Academy, he's usually watching jungle and helping with that. And yeah, we'll monitor those things for the players individually, looking at what they're doing that leads to that objective and leads to that goal, and then looking at what we do really well, like what's our strength towards it, and things that we do poorly, or like what are our weaknesses, and slowly try to like tweak and push things and focus feedback around improving those and pushing it, you know, just towards being a more clean and better process, so that everyone understands why and how this works better.
When it comes to coaches outside of esports, are there any coaches that you kind of really look up to or just kind of stole the most from?
Yeah, so that one's also been like kind of difficult to get. It's most of it's kind of been pulling from my own like experience with different like leadership figures growing up. Obviously, like I'd love to be able to talk to Steve Kerr someday and just know what you know what he does with his team, how he runs things. You know, like that's ideal.
He was
world.
repping our jersey.
Yeah, I saw that. Like that would be sick to do, but most of my experiences have kind of been coming from, you know, my personal life growing up. Like I was in ROTC as a kid. I was one of those kids, and I basically spent like 5 years of my life always working with Gunnery Sergeant Russell Sweeney. He worked at our school, and you know he comes from a military background. Basically, all my leadership like experience and mentorship came from someone in a military background. So I kind of draw a lot of things from him. The way he like gave feedback and criticism is something that I got very used to, and obviously like that doesn't work with everyone, for sure. But those concepts kind of carry over for everything of like how you talk to people, how you motivate people, and yeah, I brought like a lot of that experience into like myself coaching and have kind of adapted it like along the like 5+ years that I've been doing it. And then other than that, it's mainly been a lot of like reading, like just reading on the experiences of coaches and you know things that they've been doing.
Hold on for 1 second. We're gonna
For sure.
solve some tech stuff. Hey.
Hey.
So yeah, I just want to like dive more into like coaching and just like how it's done because and you've talked about like different coaches coach differently, but also I think that
Yep.
a lot of people have there's been a lot of negative thoughts been thrown around in Reddit and other places saying that coaches are the pool of coaching in LCS is not as high caliber as people would like, and
Yep.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Wouldn't really shock me if that's the case. I've kind of held that opinion myself, just purely from the fact that teams that I've worked on in the past, working with coaches, I've been too impressed by. Obviously, like I don't know what a lot of the other coaches do now. Like moving up, like I don't really know, but it's been my experience that it's been kind of lacking, and you kind of have to make assumptions that at some point, like, oh, this is probably just down to coaching, or like when we watch teams fail to reach the results that you would kind of expect from the roster, you kind of have to like pin it down a bit to coaching. It's the coach's job to make sure you're at least meeting expectations. Like obviously if you're doing a good job, you should be exceeding them, but you should at least meet the expectations that you have set for your roster, or like people would expect. I wouldn't say it's necessarily in the best place, but it's also kind of to be expected. Like it's a young industry. A lot of the coaches are filled with people that are similar ages to the players. So you're still building up like years of leadership experience. Like every year I've been in coaching, I've improved like an immense amount. And I'm sure it's like that for everyone. There's so much to get better on that you have to just take time to get better at. There's no way anyone's going to be like perfect as a coach in like their mid-20s, it takes a good bit of time to get good at. I think as the league like matures, as players or just people in esports get older and have been around it for long enough, like players will eventually move towards coaching. They'll bring like years of experience of playing to the table to like combine with their leadership experience and leadership skills to just be a better coach than a lot of the people that are in the industry now. So I think it just takes time, really. I think people will eventually get weeded out that aren't very useful to the system. There's definitely people that float around that are just there because, they existed when esports started up. Like that's normal. Like that's going to happen. But those people will eventually fall out as the league just holds like stricter standards on who they're hiring for coaches as a whole, and just staff. It's like that for everything. There's players that are like that. There's staff and managers that are like that. It's not going to be perfect. Yeah, it takes time.
I think the hardest part about it is that it requires a incredible amount of emotional intelligence paired with game knowledge. And usually most people are really, really strong in one, but maybe not the other. And then when they try to learn the other, it's kind of like iffy. So do you think it's better to come in with great leadership qualities and then learn the game? Or is it better to know the game and then learn leadership qualities?
Man, it's kind of tough because neither is very good without the other. I think probably it would just be that having good leadership qualities, you can probably just help the team get through their hurdles, and the team will kind of work their strategy out themselves over time. And as long as you're a good leader in helping them like grow and bond as a team and get through those hurdles together, you'll probably see more success than someone who just knows the video game and just exists and has to like build up as a leader. But like long term, the best thing is having those people that have really good game knowledge and game experience. They build up their leadership skills, which ideally they're doing like as a player. But as that builds up and gets better, having that knowledge it just helps make everything better. You can give better like input. You can give a better just like neutral perspective to the team rather than it being like a war of different perspectives, right? And then it makes your job of like managing ego, managing just the environment easier because you understand it better. Having the perspective of players is pretty important, but yeah, if I had to choose between one or the other and you could only have one, it'd just be leadership skills. There always needs to be a leader in the room.
Do you encounter ego problems at all in your career?
Oh, of course. Dude, it's competitive. Like, it's a competitive environment. Ego exists, and ego is kind of a normal thing. there's like a positive ego and a negative ego. It's never always a bad thing to have an ego. Like a lot of the time, it's what like propels you to be a great player. Like the reason that they are so good is because they have this ego and they have this like confidence in themselves that they can do like whatever that they're doing, right? And they can do it better than anyone else. And you need to have that mentality to just like push yourself to the next level for things, or push yourself past like competition. Yeah, I've ran into my fair share of like positive and negative ego, but I expect it. It's a part of the job. You kind of have to.
So we're part of a NBA organization. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
And how much do you think that we should be essentially learning from the NBA in how we run things versus us leaning into the strengths and the uniqueness of esports like LCS and leaning into that?
I would say for how we run things, well, I guess like looking at the team level of things, because I don't know too much about the like, you know, management side and all that shit. Looking at how we like run the things on a team level, I think it's really important to look at the NBA, look at just traditional sports, and carry over the experience that they have. It's taken them like years to build up, of like how things work as a team, how a team environment works. It's really important to use that experience and not just let it go to waste. Obviously there's going to be like some negative aspects of that too. It's not like they're like 100% doing it right, but these people are getting paid millions of dollars to like do this fucking correctly. And they're going to be held to a standard that, you know, they're doing it correctly. And thankfully, like we work for an organization that I think like once like new ownership came in and took over with the Warriors, like they've done like a fucking tremendous job of everything they've done. You always hear like good things about their team culture and team environment. When players and like other people are talking about that, that's when you like know it's really positive. They don't have a reason to like come out and be like, yeah, it's a great culture here. Like I love working for this place. They don't have a reason to do that. There's no benefit to them really doing it unless they're trying to like attract other players in. But we've got guys that are on that team that are saying like, yeah, I'm going to stay here for like my entire career. So I think it's important to like look at that and like learn like what have they done to instill that type of like loyalty and commitment to a team, and see what we can take from that. You know, I think it would be a real disservice to just ignore that.
Is that me? Anyways,
I think that was me. That's my bad.
That's fine.
That's my phone.
Don't do it again, Nick.
Never again. My bad.
Never again. So you set kind of goals and objective, or you set goals for everyone else. What are your own goals that you set for yourself?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, goals I set for myself. Those are, I guess I can talk about some of them. Some of them I keep pretty private to myself because a lot of it's just like, it's just very personal things with how I handle it. I'm always trying to get better at just how I just handle like team confrontations together. I feel like I'm perfectly fine handling confrontation for myself, but it's pretty important to be able to manage that, especially in my job, between other people. It's probably one of the biggest aspects of my job, and that's always something I'm constantly trying to get better at. Making sure that everyone feels like heard when they have disagreements or arguments is really fucking important. Otherwise, people will lose that like trust that we talked about, you know? So I'm always trying to like improve on that, and that's always one of my biggest goals. And whenever we have like a confrontation or something like that pop up in the team, I always kind of just self-review what happened with it, or I talk like with the other coaches as well afterwards, just like how we thought that went, like what do we think we could have done better in this. It sounds like really cheesy, but I think shit like that's really important to look at and just be very self-aware about and just open about feedback for. So I'm always trying to improve on that. I also have like my own self goals of just, it's like working on the game. I try to play the game a good amount too, just to keep myself like fresh on, you know, different perspective of how to play the game, like what a role feels like. So I try to keep my like elo pretty high, at least like comparable. My goal right now is just to start getting in games regularly with like our players, relatively close to. Like I'm in D1, but it'll take a little bit. Playing solo queue is a fucking mental grind. So I'm trying to work on my mental for that too, so I can just stay productive in those games. But that's kind of like separate from coaching. But I think it's pretty important to have that perspective and have that just updated level of game knowledge to constantly bring to the team.
Would you ever want to coach a different game? And if so, would you feel like you'd be able to do it at a high level?
Coaching a different game, yeah, it'd be cool. Be a different experience. Would definitely be cool to kind of, learn something new. Like learn an entire new game. There's just going to be like so much there to kind of take and learn from. Like I'm learning new things about League all the time, but it's not like to the same level as it is when I like first got into it and there was just all of this like stuff to learn and like pick up. Like I think it'd be really cool to learn like a game like Valorant that's like just come out, purely because of the fact that like none of it is solved at all. Like there's only so much you can know about the game. It's only been out for a few weeks, right? Just kind of like a fresh, like new world, new perspective of things. Like that would be pretty cool. I don't know if I'd be able to coach it at like the highest high level because I've never really worked in FPSs outside of Call of Duty, like way back in the day. But I'd still be able to do all right, just bringing over the same like leadership perspectives that I have from League of Legends. I would just try to adapt that, to the new environment.
There seems to be like this mad rush whenever a new game comes out. It's usually, and so, the Overwatch people kind of like died out for Valorant just because they don't have the mechanical skills like the CSGO players do. So it sounds like CSGO players are going to be the dominant, pool to pull from for Valorant Pro.
Yeah, probably. I would hope so. Like, damn, dude, they spent all that time playing CSGO. I hope they're fucking good at an FPS, So.
Do you think it's going to be as big as, the hype?
From playing it, it's definitely really enjoyable. I like it a lot more than CSGO. It kind of pulled some of the things from Overwatch that I liked, but without a lot of the gimmicky shit that Overwatch had. I think it could be as big as the hype. I hope it is. That'd be sick. It'd be cool to have another just big popular game. I don't know, just to watch. I never really get into watching CSGO as much as I could into watching League. So cool if Valorant did.
If you could dictate your players every moment, what would their day look like 7 days a week?
What would their day look like 7 days a week?
Would they have a day off?
Yeah, they would have a day off for sure. I don't know, man. I want them to do their own shit. I'd like them to practice, like a good amount, but mainly I would just care about like probably the stuff that I would make them do would just be like the sleep schedule. Like they would use this specific amount of time for sleeping and like they had to be asleep during that time. They would use this time for like exercise. They'd use this amount of time for like doing something that's definitely not League of Legends or video game. That'd probably be it. Otherwise, like, fuck, I'd rather them just do their own things that make them like happy and unwind, because that matters a lot. I think we practice enough. I think our scrim day and then the like 2+ hours of solo queue is probably enough to get good. Like, should be doing some other things to work on themselves as a team.
How do you think you and players deal with the off season?
How do I think me and players deal with the off season?
Like, is it recharging, or is it boring, or is it stressful?
Okay, so I think personally that off season is pretty boring, just because I like the like weekly competition aspect of things. I have to find like other stuff to like keep me going competitively during off season. But it's a recharge. Like being bored for a bit is fine. I can like just mentally refresh myself. I know players use it the same way. Like the stress just immediately kind of drops off once off season hits. Like I definitely feel that too. Like the stress levels just kind of disappear as soon as off season comes. Like it slowly ramps up like through the split. You just get a little bit more stressed as it comes. Like no matter what your placement is, like, oh, okay, we're almost in playoffs. Okay, we're a little bit stressed because like we have to like really fight for playoffs. Once you get playoffs, it's like, okay, we're in playoffs. Pretty stressed now because I'd like to win. And then as soon as it's gone, it's like, okay, fuck, everything's gone, reset, prepare for next year. So I feel like players deal with it the same way. Right? It's boring, but you get to reset mentally, so that's good.
Who does the best job of enjoying off-season?
That would probably be Grayson, I would think. Grayson or Jay. I know, like, I can tab over to a Discord right now and see, okay, no. I think Jay's asleep. Or he's just not at his computer. I hope he's not asleep. It's 5 p.m. They're usually always playing games together. They post, like, constant amounts of games that they're trying. Like, him and Angela are always doing something with their friend group.
Aww.
So I know he's definitely getting enjoyment out of that and just doing stuff with his significant other. So that's good. And then, what's it called? Grayson. Maybe Grayson not enjoying the offseason so much this time because he can't go outside, but I know he is extremely active with going out and doing things. Just going places, doing whatever. He definitely maximizes his time. I think Victor and John, yeah, those guys play League a lot. They keep playing League. John does his streaming. I mean, that's good. It's what they enjoy. But I don't know if I'd say it's like maximizing the like off-season free time. They kind of treat it like it's still the season, but I mean, it's not bad.
But I feel like, especially with off-season, because the regular season, you are 6 days a week, like on from morning until night. Like your life is dedicated to that. So by the time like you're off the train, it's like, all right, I'm just chill out, do absolutely nothing. So that seems to be kind of like usually what most people do is just like veg out.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So GG narrative. What is the GG narrative that people say, and what's the GG narrative that you'd like to tell?
Oh, the GG narrative that people say. I mean, I guess if we're being honest, if we're looking at what casters usually say and like people doing content usually say, they say it's like a bottom feeder team, even though, yeah, it hasn't really been for the past year and a half now. We've been in playoffs more often than we haven't. We've started building up 2 really young players that have shown to be really fucking good at their role. I'd like people to kind of, I don't know, I'd like people to recognize that and put more, just emphasis on how well, players like FBI, Closer are doing. Huhi with his role swap, like he came in like under Keith with this, right? And like despite the fact that like he got benched in off season for Keith, like he kept grinding and eventually like earned his way back and he's doing well. You kind of don't hear anything from that. You kind of just hear people like shit on Keith or Huhi both because they're off roll and they like find something to blame when like both of those guys are doing great considering it. Like fuck man, you compare them to like how some other players are playing, like they're doing really fucking well in comparison. There's a reason that we went after that option over getting another domestic support, and those guys are doing great. You just kind of don't hear people hit on that much. You don't hear people like say anything about like Haunter either. You kind of just ignore top laners unless you're someday. And Golden Glue still gets shit too. This is the first time Grayson's earned playoffs like on his own, like played the whole year and got it on his own. You don't hear anything about it. It'd be nice for that type of narrative to be brought up by the league at some point. I don't know. I just like to hear more positives about the young players that we have and how well they're doing. Like their storylines and stuff would be great for people to recognize because they're doing a lot. They're doing a whole lot and they kind of just get shit on for no reason. Just feels bad.
I think that's what GG kind of set up, and that's the kind of what you guys have been trying to do, which is to have like incremental progress, like on a weekly basis, if not daily, with your goals, and then trying to meet them. So, yeah, the way that I see it is that you've got a bunch of people making incredible progress throughout the season, and a lot of that gets like overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're perfect or anything. Yeah,
no, we're totally perfect.
Like it's Yeah, we're totally perfect. Like it's just started, but like the slow improvement has been good, and the goal is just to do that over time. Like coming out, getting playoffs, like that's just like a starter goal, like that's like where it begins. Like sixth place is like you're not even like halfway up the league yet, like you're at number 6, like you're right at the edge of halfway on the league, but it's still like it's a good starter point for like young, like new players to be at. And yeah, it'd just be good to not be seen as a complete bottom feeder team while we're building these guys up. It would be nice because yeah, eventually like FBI, like closer, like they're very young. They're gonna be like household names in the league. Like they're gonna be really fucking good, and people will eventually recognize it. But yeah, it'd just be cool for casters and shit to recognize that, like as it's happening.
Who made the most progress this split
Who made the most progress
on your team?
Yeah, it's one I'd rather not say.
Okay, fair enough.
I think everyone's making really good progress.
That was I love all my children equally. They all have progressed in their own unique way. They're all beautiful snowflakes, and I love them all. That was good. I was testing you. I was testing you.
Really good test, Mark.
All right. Also, another thing that you're probably not allowed to say at all, but what can you tell me about what your plan is for next split and goals that you want to hit?
Goal for next split? Yeah. So a lot of this split was just figuring out the like team dynamic that we would have and where we would feel, most strong playing towards, figuring out our strengths and weaknesses. My goal for next split is just to push on that even harder, like really, really develop and showcase like our team style and our strength, and then just push higher, like a higher placement than we had this split. Like I'm not happy with just 6th. I'm not happy like going out first round of playoffs, and I know the team's not either. Like I want to push like for next round at a minimum. Yeah, goal is just to do better than we did last year, and then just like more define and show off our play style.
Okay. All right. And to end off the rapid fire, James Lipton inside the actor studio. You ready for this again?
Sure.
This is the last time we actually have to do it. As long as it gets recorded, then we're good. Let's see
Okay.
if this works.
I don't remember the question, so yeah.
Good. What's your favorite word?
Yeah, this is the one I didn't know last time either. My favorite word. I have no idea, man. I have no idea. What is why do people like words? Win. I like win. Let's go with win.
All right, what's your least favorite word?
Moist. I remember that one at least.
What turns you on?
What turns me on? Ambition.
What turns you off?
Laziness.
What sound or noise do you love?
Sound or noise? Oh yeah, I remember this from last time. The hit marker sound in Call of Duty. That feels so fucking good every time.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Sound or noise I hate. I guess like chalkboard sound. Like someone just like dragging their nails across. Even just chalk on chalkboard. Fuck chalkboard. Sounds awful. Yeah.
I can't handle it, even just the regular chalk. What's your favorite curse word?
Favorite curse word? Fuck.
Couldn't tell. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would like to do live lighting, sound design, stuff with that. Working in live concerts would be sick.
And what profession would you not like to do?
Remember this one from last time? Anything on Dirty Jobs, that show. Any of those jobs, I'm good. It's a pass.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Just sup. Hey, man. I'm chill with that.
Cool. Well, I'm chill with that. Nick, thank you for doing this again after doing this last week as well. I hope that it wasn't too redundant.
Nah, it was all good, man. No problem.
Cool, man.
Anytime.
All right. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah.